Okay, my dears. Have you ever wondered how much trouble a sham marriage can cause when the hearts are so close? I'm your old friend, Mr. John Doe, 58 years old and still causing trouble, shouting from my sagging porch in Hudson, New York. You know the drill, we gray-haired people have loved so much it hurts, lost so much it hurts, and giggled so hard we almost peed our pants. Tonight, I'm going to tell a story of hot deals, hotter fights, and enough hot feelings to fog up your glasses. So pour the red wine, throw on those orthopedic shoes, and let's talk like no one's watching. Hit the subscribe button to continue my story, and comment, what's the craziest love stunt you've ever pulled? Come on, girls. Tell me the hot stuff. The sun was bleeding out over the Pacific, painting the cliffs of Big Sur in shades of crimson and gold. Jada West stood on the balcony of a glass-walled villa at Indigo Bay, the most exclusive resort on the California coast. The wind whipped her curly hair into a wild halo, tugging at the tight navy uniform that hugged her curves a little too well. Her skin, a rich, glowing brown, caught the fading light like polished amber. She muttered Hindi vocabulary under her breath, the words slipping out soft and rhythmic, barely audible over the crash of waves below. Her earbuds hummed with a language app, her only escape from the grind of scrubbing floors for billionaires who'd never know her name. She didn't notice the man watching her from the shadows of the villa's terrace. Lucas Sloan, all sharp jawline and colder than ice blue eyes, leaned against the railing, a glass of bourbon in hand. His tailored suit screamed money, but his stare was pure calculation. Jada's voice, low and melodic, had snagged his attention, but it was the way she moved, confident, almost defiant, despite the mop in her hand that made him pause. Damn, he thought. She's trouble. The kind he didn't need, but couldn't ignore. Inside, the villa was a cathedral of wealth marble floors, a chandelier dripping crystals, the faint scent of sandalwood lingering like a rich man's afterthought. Jada pushed her cleaning cart through the sliding doors, oblivious to the eyes on her. She was halfway through wiping down a glass table when her walkie-talkie crackled. West, get your ass to the main office. Now. The voice was clipped, belonging to some assistant who didn't bother with pleasantries. Jada's jaw tightened. She wasn't late, hadn't broken anything. So what the hell? She stashed her cart, pulled out her earbuds, and headed down the winding path to the resort's nerve center. The air was thick with salt and pine, the kind of scent that made you forget how brutal the world could be. Indigo Bay was a fantasy for the 1% villas perched on cliffs, private beaches where waves whispered secrets, a spa that smelled like money and promises. But for Jada, it was just another job, another way to keep her brothers fed and her dreams buried. The main office was a sleek fortress of glass and steel, all clean lines and cold light. Jada pushed through the heavy doors, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. The receptionist, a blonde with a smile as fake as her nails, didn't look up. Sloan's waiting, she said, jerking her head toward a corner office. Jada's stomach twisted. Lucas Sloan, the big boss. She'd seen him from a distance, always striding through the resort like he owned the damn ocean. Which, to be fair, he kind of did. But why the hell did he want her? She knocked once, then pushed the door open. The office was a power move in itself, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the churning sea, a mahogany desk the size of a small car, and a faint whiff of cigar smoke that screamed old money. Lucas stood by the window, his back to her, broad shoulders filling out his suit like it was made for war. He turned, and those blue eyes hit her like a punch. Miss West, he said, voice smooth but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Sit. Jada didn't move. What's this about? She asked, crossing her arms. Her voice was steady, but her heart was doing a shitty job of staying calm. Lucas raised an eyebrow, clearly not used to pushback from someone in a cleaning uniform. He gestured to a leather chair, but she stayed put, her chin up, curls falling defiantly over one shoulder. Fine. Stand, he said, tossing a folder onto the desk. It landed with a thud, the sound echoing in the quiet room. I've got a proposition for you, one that'll change your life, or at least your bank account. Jada's eyes narrowed. I'm not for sale, if that's what you're getting at. Her tone was ice, but there was heat behind it. The kind that came from years of dodging creeps who thought a pretty face meant an easy mark. Lucas laughed, a low, rough sound that sent a shiver down her spine. Relax. I'm not that kind of asshole. Open the folder. She hesitated, then stepped forward, her fingers brushing the cool leather of the chair as she picked up the file. The pages inside were dense with legal jargon, but the header screamed loud and clear, marriage contract. Her head snapped up. What the actual fuck language? Lucas said, smirking, but his eyes were all business. Here's the deal. I need a wife. Not a real one, just someone to play the part for 6 months. You're perfect for it. Jada's laugh was sharp, almost a bark. Perfect man. You're out of your damn mind. Why me? And why the hell do you need a fake wife? Lucas leaned against the desk, close enough that she caught the cedar and spice scent of his cologne. It was distracting, and she hated that. I'm in a bind, he said, voice dropping like he was letting her in on a secret. Gotta mess with the board some bullshit about me skimming funds, which I didn't do. They're saying I'm too unstable, too much of a bachelor to run this place. Plus, my grandmother, Margaret Sloan, maybe you've heard of her, she's got this old-school obsession with family legacy. Says I need to settle down or she'll hand my shares to my cousin. I need someone who looks good on paper, doesn't have an agenda, and won't fuck it up. That's you. Jada's grip on the folder tightened, her nails digging into the paper. You don't even know me. I know enough, he shot back. Jada West, 29. No record, no social media. Lives in a shitty apartment in Monterey with 2 brothers. You're invisible, which is exactly what I need. Plus, I hear you're smart. Smarter than you let on. Her stomach dropped. He'd done his homework, and it pissed her off. You're stalking me now. That's creepy as hell. It's business, he said, unfazed. And here's the business part you do this. I pay you 200 grand. Enough to cover that heart surgery your brother Mason needs, plus some left over for whatever else you're scraping by for. Jada froze. Mason. The kid was 16, all skinny limbs and quiet smiles, but his heart was a ticking time bomb. The doctors had given them a year, maybe less, without the surgery. 200 grand wasn't just money, it was his life. She swallowed hard, hating how her voice shook when she spoke. You think you can just throw cash at me and I'll jump? Lucas tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he hadn't quite cracked. I think you're not stupid. You want to save your brother? This is how you do it. 6 months. A few public appearances, some fake smiles, then you walk away rich. And I keep my empire. Win-win. Jada flipped through the contract, her eyes scanning the terms. It was airtight NDAs, schedules, even a clause about appropriate physical displays of affection. She stopped at a line in Spanish, a typo that made the clause nonsensical. Without thinking, she grabbed a pen from the desk and corrected it, her hand steady despite the storm in her chest. "Your lawyer's sloppy," she said, sliding the folder back. "This says you're marrying a goat." Lucas blinked, then snatched the folder, his lips twitching like he was fighting a smile. 12 languages. Huh. They weren't kidding. "Who's they?" Jada snapped, but her mind was racing. She'd been careful, keeping her language skills under wraps, studying in the dead of night while Caleb and Mason slept. How the hell did he know? "Doesn't matter," he said, waving it off. "Point is, you're not just a maid. You're a goddamn asset. So, you in or not?" Jada's throat tightened. She thought of Mason, pale and wheezing after a bad day. Caleb, 18 and trying so hard to be the man of the house. Her mom's voice, soft with gospel hymns, echoing in her memory. She'd promised to keep them safe, no matter what. But this playing house with a smug bastard like Lucas Sloan, it felt like selling her soul. "Fuck it," she said finally, grabbing the pen again. "But don't think you own me. Sloan, you pull any shit, and I'll burn your world down." Lucas's smirk was all teeth. Noted. "Welcome to the game, Mrs. Sloan." Their hands brushed as she signed, his fingers warm against hers, sending a jolt through her that she didn't want to feel. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the air thick with something she couldn't name. His cologne lingered, mixing with the salty tang of the sea outside. And for a split second, she caught him looking at her not like a boss, not like a deal-maker, but like a man who saw too much. She yanked her hand back, heart pounding, and shoved the folder at him. "Done," she said, turning for the door. "Don't call me unless it's showtime." "Jada," he called, voice softer now, almost dangerous. She paused, not looking back. "You're gonna need to work on that attitude. People will be watching. Let 'em watch," she shot back, and walked out, the door clicking shut behind her like a gunshot. The Monterey apartment was a far cry from Indigo Bay's glitz. The walls were thin, the carpet stained, and the air always smelled faintly of burnt toast. Jada kicked off her sneakers, her body aching from the night shift and the weight of what she'd just done. The living room was dark, except for the glow of a streetlight sneaking through the blinds. Caleb was sprawled on the couch, textbooks scattered, probably pulling an all-nighter for his community college exams. Mason was in the bedroom, his soft snores a reminder of why she'd said yes to Lucas's insane deal. She sank onto the floor, leaning against the couch, and pulled out her phone. The language app was still open. A new Hindi phrase blinking, "Main aapki madad kar sakta hoon." "I can help you," she snorted. Help. That's what she was supposed to do for Lucas, help him keep his throne while she played pretend. But who was helping her? Nobody. That's who. Just like always. Her eyes drifted to the photo taped to the fridge, her mom. All warm smiles and braids, singing at a church picnic. Jada's throat burned. "I'm trying. Mama," she whispered. "But this shit's gonna break me." She didn't sleep that night. The contract sat heavy in her mind, Lucas's voice looping like a bad song. "You're an asset. Asset. Her ass." She was Jada West, the girl who'd taught herself 12 languages while scrubbing toilets, who'd raised 2 boys when the world took everything else. She'd play his game, but on her terms. And if Lucas Sloan thought he could control her, he was in for one hell of a wake-up call. Yo, that's just the start of Jada's wild ride. Will she outsmart Lucas? Or will his world swallow her whole? Hit that subscribe button to find out how this fake marriage turns into something nobody saw coming. Drop a comment. Do you think Jada's gonna win this game? Or is Lucas playing a hand she can't beat? Let's talk. The ballroom at Indigo Bay was a goddamn spectacle. All glittering chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Pacific like a painting. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and champagne, the kind of place where you could smell money before you saw it. Jada West stood at the edge of the crowd, feeling like a fish in a shark tank. Her red silk dress clung to her curves, the deep neckline showing just enough to make heads turn. Her curly hair was swept up, a few tendrils brushing her bare shoulders, and her brown skin glowed under the soft lights. She was a knockout, no question. But every step in those stupid heels felt like walking into a trap. Tonight was the big show, Lucas Sloan's public announcement of their engagement. The room buzzed with the elite tech moguls, Hollywood types, even a senator or two, all sipping overpriced drinks and pretending they gave a shit about each other. Jada's job was simple: smile, look pretty, and don't fuck it up. But as she scanned the crowd, her stomach churned. These people didn't just look at you, they judged you, stripped you down to your bones with a glance. Lucas was across the room, working the crowd like a pro, his tailored tux fitting him like a second skin. He laughed at some old guy's joke, but his eyes kept flicking to Jada, checking if she was holding up her end of the deal. She caught his gaze and forced a smile, the kind that said, "I'm here, asshole. Now what?" He nodded, barely, then turned back to his conversation. Typical. All charm in public, all cold shoulder when it was just them. "Damn, girl. You're serving looks tonight," a voice said, low and warm. Jada turned to see Eli Carter, the resort's best bartender and her ride or die since day one. His dreads were pulled back, and his black vest couldn't hide the mischief in his grin. He held out a glass of sparkling water, knowing she wouldn't touch the booze on a night like this. "Shut up, Eli," she said, taking the glass, her lips twitching. "This dress is a nightmare. I can barely breathe." "Bullshit. You're owning it," he said, leaning closer. "But real talk, you okay with this circus? Sloan's got you playing house like it's nothing." Jada's smile faded. "I'm fine, it's just 6 months, right? Then I'm out, and Mason's got his surgery." Eli's eyes softened, but there was something else there, something unspoken. "Just watch yourself." Jada. Guys like him, they don't play fair. Before she could respond, a sharp laugh cut through the noise. Vanessa Reed, the spa manager, glided over, her blonde hair sleek and her emerald dress screaming, "I'm better than you." She was all legs and fake smiles, the kind of woman who could charm a snake and then skin it. "Well, look at you," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with honey and venom. "From mopping floors to fiancé, that's one hell of a glow-up." "Sweetheart." Jada's grip on her glass tightened. "Thanks. Vanessa, guess some of us don't need to fake it to make it." Vanessa's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. "Oh, honey, don't get cocky. Everyone's wondering how a maid snagged Lucas Sloan. Care to share the secret?" She leaned in, voice low. "Or should I just check the gossip blogs?" Eli stepped forward, But Jada put a hand on his arm, her voice steady. You want to know my secret? It's called not being a miserable bitch. Try it sometime. The crowd nearby went quiet, heads turning. Vanessa's face flushed, but before she could fire back, Lucas appeared, his presence like a storm rolling in. Everything all right here, he asked, his tone casual, but his eyes locked on Vanessa. Just congratulating the happy couple, Vanessa said, recovering fast. She flashed a smile and sauntered off, her heels clicking like a countdown. Lucas turned to Jada, his voice low. You good I'm not your damn damsel, she snapped, keeping her voice down. I can handle her. His lips twitched, almost a smile. Noted. But keep it together. West. We've got eyes on us. He offered his arm, and after a beat, she took it, her fingers brushing the crisp fabric of his sleeve. The contact sent a spark through her, one she tried to ignore. His cologne cedar and something darker hit her like a drug, and she hated how it made her pulse jump. They moved through the crowd, Lucas introducing her as my fiancée with a practiced charm that made her skin crawl. She played along, smiling, nodding. But every touch of his hand on her back felt like a brand. The room was a blur of faces, but one stood out. Dr. Amara Cole, a black woman in her 40s, all sharp cheekbones and quiet power. She was a guest, a cardiologist, and her warm nod to Jada felt like a lifeline in this sea of sharks. The night dragged on until Lucas led Jada to a private alcove for a photo op. The photographer, a wiry guy with too much gel in his hair, was already set up, lights glaring. All right. Lovebirds. Let's make it quick, he said, adjusting his camera. Get close. Act like you can't keep your hands off each other. Jada's stomach flipped. Act was the key word, but the way Lucas's arm slid around her waist didn't feel like acting. His hand rested on her hip, firm but careful, and the heat of his palm burned through the thin silk of her dress. She stiffened, but he leaned in, his breath brushing her ear. Relax, Jada, he murmured, voice low enough to make her shiver. You're doing fine. Easy for you to say, she muttered, forcing herself to lean into him. The photographer snapped away. The cameras clicked loud in the quiet alcove. Lucas's fingers tightened slightly, pulling her closer, and she caught the faint scent of whiskey on his breath, mixing with that damn cologne. Her body betrayed her, a flush creeping up her neck as his thumb grazed the curve of her waist. The lights were too bright, the air too warm, and for a second, she forgot the crowd, forgot the contract, forgot everything but the way his touch felt. Perfect, the photographer called, breaking the spell. Jada pulled back, her heart pounding, and Lucas's hand lingered a beat too long before he let go. His eyes met hers, unreadable, and she looked away, hating how her skin still tingled where he'd touched her. Get what you need, Lucas asked the photographer, his voice cool again, like nothing had happened. Yep, you're golden, the guy said, packing up. You two look like you're about to set the room on fire. Jada snorted, brushing past Lucas to grab her sparkling water from a nearby table. Don't get any ideas, she said under her breath, loud enough for him to hear. He smirked, following her. Wouldn't dream of it. Mrs. Sloane, call me that again, and I'll deck you, she shot back. But there was a spark in her eyes, a challenge she couldn't quite hide. The rest of the night was a gauntlet of small talk and fake smiles. But Jada's mind kept drifting back to that moment in the alcove. She hated how Lucas got under her skin, how his touch made her feel things she had no business feeling. He was a means to an end, money for Mason's surgery, nothing more. But the way he looked at her, like he saw more than the role she was playing, messed with her head. Then came the curveball. Near the end of the night, a French diplomat, flustered and red-faced, approached the bar, rattling off complaints about a mix-up with his villa's dinner menu. The staff froze, none of them fluent enough to keep up. Jada, standing nearby, caught the guy's words and stepped in before she could think better of it. "Monsieur, je peux vous aider," she said, her French smooth as silk. "What's the issue with the menu?" The diplomat blinked, then launched into a rapid explanation about dietary restrictions and missing courses. Jada nodded, translating for the staff, her voice calm but firm. Within minutes, she'd sorted it out, sending the guy back to his table with a smile. The crowd around her went quiet, some clapping lightly, others whispering. She felt their eyes curious, impressed, judgmental, and her stomach twisted. She'd broken her own rule, stay invisible. Lucas was at her side in an instant, his expression unreadable. "Nice save," he said, voice low. "Didn't know you were hiding that in your back pocket." She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Just doing my job." "Bullshit," he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping. "That wasn't your job. That was you being a goddamn rock star." Jada's breath caught, but she forced a laugh. "Don't get soft on me. Sloane, you're paying me to play fiancé, not translator." He didn't laugh, just studied her, his eyes tracing the curve of her jaw like he was seeing her for the first time. The moment stretched, heavy with something she didn't want to name, until Vanessa's voice sliced through it like a knife. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Vanessa said, sidling up with a glass of champagne. The maid turned miracle worker. "Tell me, Jada, how does it feel to go from cleaning toilets to saving the day?" Jada's jaw clenched, but before she could fire back, Lucas cut in, his tone ice cold. "Vanessa, unless you've got something useful to say, get lost." Vanessa's smile faltered, but she recovered fast, tossing her hair, just making conversation. "Lucas, enjoy your fiancé." She walked off, but the venom in her eyes promised trouble. Eli appeared, handing Jada another glass of water. "You handled that like a boss," he said, but his gaze flicked to Lucas. "Wary. Watch your back with her. She's got claws." "I can handle claws," Jada said, but her voice was tight. She glanced at Lucas, who was watching Vanessa disappear into the crowd, his jaw set. For a second, she wondered what he was thinking, but then she shook it off. He was her boss, her fake fiancé. Nothing more. Whatever spark she'd felt in that alcove was just her imagination, or worse, his game. As the night wound down, Jada slipped out to the terrace, needing air. The sea roared below, waves crashing against the cliffs, and the cool breeze felt like a slap, waking her up. She leaned against the railing, her dress fluttering, and closed her eyes. She could still feel Lucas's hand on her hip, hear his voice in her ear. "Damn it, Jada, get it together." She was here for Mason, for Caleb, not for some rich guy's mind games. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. Lucas Sloane was trouble, and she was already in too deep. The cliffs of Indigo Bay were shrouded in mist. the Pacific churning below like it was pissed off at the world. Jada West stood in the staff locker room, the fluorescent lights harsh against her skin. She yanked off her cleaning uniform, trading it for jeans and a black tank top that hugged her curves. Her curls were a mess, spilling over her shoulders, and her brown eyes burned with something between anger and exhaustion. Last night's gala was still a raw nerve the way Lucas's hand had seared her skin. Vanessa's venomous smile, the crowd's whispers slicing her like knives. She'd played the perfect fiancé, but it felt like swallowing glass. She slammed her locker shut, the clang echoing in the empty room. Her phone buzzed on the bench. A text from Eli. "You good heard, Vanessa's talking shit again." Jada snorted. Typing back, "Let her talk. I got bigger problems." Like Lucas Sloan, who was either a genius or a devil, and she still couldn't decide which. The memory of his breath on her ear during that photo op kept sneaking into her head, uninvited, and it pissed her off. He was a means to an end, money for Mason's surgery, nothing more. So why the hell did her pulse jump every time he got too close? The resort was quieter in the early afternoon. The guests either lounging by the infinity pool or hiding in their villas. Jada was on her way to the service exit when she heard a commotion from the main lobby. A Japanese businessman, red-faced and loud, was arguing with a concierge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. His rapid-fire Japanese was lost on the staff, and the tension was thick enough to choke on. Jada hesitated. Her rule was to stay invisible, keep her languages under wraps, but the guy's voice cracked with frustration, and something in her snapped. She stepped forward, her sneakers silent on the marble floor. "Sumimasen. Dushita no desu ka," she said, her Japanese smooth and precise. "What's the problem?" The man blinked, then unleashed a torrent of complaints about a missing reservation for a private yacht tour. Jada listened, nodding, her voice calm as she translated for the concierge. Within 10 minutes, she'd sorted it out, the guy shaking her hand with a grateful bow before heading off. The lobby staff stared, some whispering, others just stunned. Jada felt their eyes like weights, and her stomach twisted. "Stupid," she thought. "Why'd you do that?" She was halfway to the exit when Lucas's voice stopped her cold. "West." He was leaning against a pillar, arms crossed, his dark button-down open at the collar. The way he said her name, low and deliberate, made her skin prickle. "Got a minute?" "Not really," she said, keeping her tone sharp. "Some of us have actual work to do." He smirked, pushing off the pillar and closing the distance between them. "That was some stunt you pulled. Japanese. Huh. How many languages you hiding?" Jada crossed her arms, her tank top shifting to reveal a sliver of her collarbone. She caught his eyes, flick there, just for a second, before he met her gaze again. "None of your business," she said. "You hired me to play wifey, not show off." "Fair," he said, but his voice had an edge, like he was testing her. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. She followed him, her sneakers scuffing the floor, as he led her to a quiet terrace overlooking the sea. The air was salty, the mist cool against her skin, and the distant roar of waves filled the silence. Lucas leaned against the railing, his profile sharp against the gray sky. "Why do you do that?" he asked, not looking at her. Do what she shot back, standing a few feet away, arms still crossed. "Hide," he said, turning to face her. "You're smarter than half the people running this place, but you act like you're nobody." Why Jada's throat tightened. She wasn't ready for this. for him to see through her like that. "You don't know shit about me," she said, but her voice wavered. "And don't pretend you care. This is a deal. Sloane. That's it." He stepped closer, close enough that she caught the cedar and whiskey scent of him, the same one that had messed with her head last night. "Maybe I'm curious," he said, his voice low, almost dangerous. "You learned 12 languages scrubbing floors. That's not just talent. That's hunger. What's driving you?" Jada. Her heart pounded, and for a stupid moment, she wanted to tell him about her mom's gospel hymns, her dad's laugh, the car crash that stole them both, about Caleb's late-night study sessions, Mason's weak heart, the way she'd clawed her way through grief with dictionaries and audio files. But she didn't. Instead, she laughed, sharp and bitter. "What's driving me? 200 grand and a kid who needs to live. That's it. Don't make it complicated." Lucas's jaw tightened, but he didn't push. "Fine," he said. "But you're not invisible anymore. People saw what you did back there. Get used to it." She was about to fire back when her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification of video on some gossip site, trending fast. Her stomach dropped as she opened it. There she was, in her cleaning uniform, pushing a cart through a villa. The footage grainy but unmistakable. The caption read, "Lucas Sloane's fiancé." From maid to millionaire comments poured in, each one uglier than the last. Gold digger, fraud. Who's she screwing to get that ring? Jada's hands shook, her breath catching. She knew who was behind this. Vanessa. That bitch had been gunning for her since day one, and now she'd gone nuclear. The terrace spun, the waves below roaring louder, and for a second, she thought she might puke. Jada Lucas's voice cut through the fog, sharper now. He grabbed her phone, his face darkening as he scrolled. "Son of a bitch," he muttered, then looked at her, his eyes fierce. "Stay here." "No," she said, snatching her phone back. "I'm not your damn puppet. I'll handle this." Handle it how he snapped. "You go after Vanessa. You'll just give her more ammo. Let me deal with it." She laughed, but it was hollow. "Deal with it? Like you dealt with last night, standing there while she called me a nobody." "Fuck that. Lucas, I'm done playing nice." She turned to leave, but his hand caught her wrist, his grip firm but not rough. The contact sent a jolt through her, hot and electric, and she hated how her body reacted. "Jada, listen," he said, his voice low, urgent. "You go out there swinging. You'll lose. Trust me on this." "Trust you," she said, yanking her arm free, but she didn't move away. They were close now, too close, the mist clinging to her skin, his breath warm against her face. "Why the hell should I trust you? You're the one who dragged me into this shit show." His eyes searched hers, and for a moment, the mask slipped. She saw something raw, something real, anger, maybe, or guilt. "Because I'm not the enemy," he said, his voice rough. "And because I'm not letting Vanessa or anyone else tear you down." Before she could respond, his phone rang, shrill and insistent. He cursed under his breath, stepping back to answer it. Jada took the chance to bolt, her heart hammering as she headed for the staff exit. She needed air, space, anything to clear the chaos in her head. But Lucas's words stuck. burrowing deep. I'm not letting anyone tear you down. Bullshit. He was just protecting his investment. Right. The next day, the gossip site was still blowing up, but something else was trending too. A press conference, live from Indigo Bay. Jada watched it on her phone, holed up in her apartment. Mason curled up beside her on the couch. Lucas stood at a podium, cameras flashing, his face all hard lines and quiet fury. The rumors about Jada West are garbage, he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. She's not just my fiancée, she's the smartest, most capable woman I've ever met. Anyone who's got a problem with her can take it up with me. The crowd murmured, reporters shouting questions, but Lucas didn't flinch. He looked straight into the camera, his blue eyes blazing. This resort, this empire, doesn't run on lies. It runs on people like Jada, who don't need a fancy title to prove their worth. So back the hell off. Jada's breath caught, her phone slipping from her hand. Mason looked up, confused. He's talking about you. Jada. That's good. Right. Yeah, she said, but her voice was barely a whisper. Good maybe, but it felt like something else, something dangerous. Lucas hadn't just defended her, he'd put himself on the line, in front of the world. And that scared the shit out of her. That night, Lucas found her at the resort, in the staff parking lot, leaning against her beat-up Honda. The sky was bruised purple, the air heavy with the promise of rain. He was in jeans and a black jacket, no trace of the polished CEO, and it threw her off. You didn't have to do that, she said, not looking at him. Her voice tight. The press conference. It's not in the contract. He stepped closer, the gravel crunching under his boots. Fuck the contract, he said. And there was a rawness in his voice she hadn't heard before. You think I'd let them drag you through the mud? You're not just some prop. Jada, she laughed, sharp and bitter, finally meeting his eyes. Then what am I? Your charity case, your fake fiancé who happens to speak 12 languages. Tell me, Lucas, because I'm real damn tired of guessing. He was close now, close enough that she could see the stubble on his jaw, feel the heat radiating off him. The parking lot was empty, the only sound the distant crash of waves and the hum of a streetlight flickering overhead. You're a fucking wildfire, he said, his voice low, almost a growl. And I'm trying not to get burned. Her breath hitched, and before she could stop herself, she stepped into his space, her chest brushing his. The air crackled, rain starting to fall in soft, cold drops. His hand came up, slow, like he was giving her a chance to pull away, and when his fingers grazed her cheek, wiping away a raindrop, it felt like fire on her skin. Her lips parted, and for a stupid, reckless moment, she thought he'd kiss her. She wanted him to, and that scared her more than anything. But then a car horn blared, shattering the moment. Jada jerked back, her heart pounding, rain clinging to her lashes. Lucas cursed under his breath, his hand dropping. Go home. Jada, he said, his voice rough. We'll talk tomorrow. She didn't trust herself to speak, just nodded and got in her car, her hands shaking as she gripped the wheel. The rain came harder now, drumming on the roof, and as she drove away, Lucas's silhouette faded in the rearview mirror. But his touch lingered, hot and heavy. And she knew one thing for sure, whatever this was, it wasn't just a deal anymore. The sun was a molten ball sinking into the Pacific, casting vin indigo in hues of fire and shadow. Jada West sat on the edge of her bed in her Monterey apartment, the faint smell of burnt coffee lingering from Caleb's morning disaster in the kitchen. Her phone was a landmine, buzzing with notifications, gossip blogs still milking that damn video of her in her cleaning uniform, now paired with clips of Lucas's press conference. The headlines were brutal Sloane's Cinderella real love or publicity stunt. She tossed the phone onto the mattress, her curls falling over her face as she rubbed her temples. Last night's almost kiss in the rain haunted her. Lucas's fingers on her cheek burning like a brand. She'd wanted him. Bad. And that was a problem. He was her fake fiancé, her ticket to saving Mason, not some guy she could let her guard down for. So why the hell couldn't she shake him? A knock on the door snapped her out of it. Caleb, lanky and bleary-eyed, poked his head in. Yo, Jada. Some fancy-ass car just pulled up outside. You expecting company? Her stomach dropped. What? No. She pushed past him, peering through the living room's cracked blinds. A black Bentley idled in the parking lot, sleek and out of place in their rundown complex. The driver's door opened, and Lucas Sloane stepped out, all dark jeans and a leather jacket, looking like he'd walked off a movie set. Shit, she muttered, her heart doing a traitor's sprint. What's he doing here? Caleb asked, crossing his arms. At 18, he was already protective, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much. Stay here, Jada said, grabbing her hoodie and heading out before Caleb could argue. The evening air was cool, thick with the scent of salt and asphalt. Lucas leaned against the car, his blue eyes locking onto her like a missile. She stopped a few feet away, arms crossed over her tank top, her curves still catching the streetlight's glow. You lost, Sloane, she asked, keeping her tone sharp. This ain't your side of town. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Needed to talk, away from the circus. His voice was low, rougher than usual, like he hadn't slept either. You gonna invite me in, or we doing this out here? She snorted. My brothers don't need to see your face. Say what you gotta say. He pushed off the car, closing the distance between them. The streetlight cast shadows across his jaw, making him look both dangerous and tired. Vanessa's not done, he said, voice tight. She's teaming up with Olivia Crane, one of my board members. They're pushing the embezzlement story hard, saying I'm a liability, that you're in on it. The board's calling an emergency meeting next week. If we don't sell this engagement, I'm out, and your brother's surgery's off the table. Jada's chest tightened, Mason's pale face flashing in her mind. So what? You want me to smile prettier? I'm already playing your game. Lucas. His jaw clenched, and for a second, she thought he'd snap back. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. I'm not asking you to play harder. I'm asking you to come with me. Tonight. We need to practice, make sure we're airtight before the board grills us. Practice. She laughed, sharp and bitter. What? Like a damn rehearsal? You think I can't handle a few suits? I think you're a wildfire, he said, echoing his words from last night, his voice dropping low enough to make her skin prickle. But wildfires burn out if they're not careful. Come with me. Jada. One night. No cameras. No bullshit. Just us. Her pulse jumped, and she hated it. Hated how his voice wrapped around her. How his eyes saw too much. Fine, she said, against her better judgment. "But if you pull any crap, I'm out." He nodded, opening the passenger door. "Deal." The drive was quiet. The Bentley's engine a soft purr as they wound along the cliffs toward a private villa on the edge of Vin Indigo. The place was a fortress of glass and stone, perched like it was daring the ocean to take it down. Inside, the air was warm, scented with cedar and something faintly sweet, like honey. A jazz record spun on a turntable. Ella Fitzgerald's voice curling through the room like smoke. The lights were low, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor, and a wall of windows framed the sea, waves glinting under a crescent moon. Jada stood in the living room, arms crossed, her hoodie unzipped to reveal the tank top clinging to her curves. Lucas shrugged off his jacket, tossing it onto a leather couch. "Drink?" he asked, heading for a bar cart stocked with bottles that probably cost more than her rent. "Water," she said, keeping her tone flat. "Let's get this over with." He handed her a glass, his fingers brushing hers for a split second, sending a spark through her. She ignored it, taking a sip and pacing to the window. "So, what's the plan? You gonna quiz me on your favorite color or some shit?" He chuckled, leaning against the bar, his dark shirt open at the collar. "Nah, we need to know each other. Really know each other. The board's gonna dig ask about our first date, how we met, what makes us tick. If we slip, they'll smell blood." She turned, raising an eyebrow. "And you think one night's gonna make us look like soulmates, no?" he said, his voice softer now, almost serious. "But it's a start. Tell me something real, Jada, something nobody else knows." Her throat tightened. She wasn't ready for this, for him to peel back her layers. But his eyes were steady, not mocking. And for some reason, she didn't look away. "Fine," she said, setting her glass down. "When I was 15, after my parents died, I used to sit in the library till it closed, teaching myself Spanish from old textbooks. It was the only thing that kept me from falling apart. I'd whisper the words like they could bring my mom back." Her voice cracked, and she hated it. "Your turn." Lucas didn't flinch, but something shifted in his face, like a wall coming down. "I was 19, sleeping in my car, working 3 jobs to save for my first property. One night, I found a kid's drawing on the windshield, a stick figure family, left by some random kid. I kept it. Still got it in my desk. Reminds me why I started this." He paused, his voice rough. Not exactly the glamorous bullshit people expect. Huh. Jada's chest ached, and she hated that too. Hated how his story made him human. Not just the smug bastard she'd signed a contract with. "Guess we're both good at hiding," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The jazz record switched to a slower track, the notes heavy and warm. Lucas stepped closer, his boots soft on the floor. "Dance with me," he said. Not a question, but not quite a demand. She laughed, nervous. "You serious I don't dance?" "You do tonight," he said, holding out a hand. His eyes were a challenge, but there was something else there, something that made her say yes when she should have said no. She took his hand, her skin tingling as his fingers closed around hers. He pulled her in, one hand on her waist, the other guiding her arm to his shoulder. The room seemed to shrink, the world narrowing to the heat of his body, the cedar and whiskey scent of him, the way his thumb grazed her hip through her tank top. They moved slowly, swaying to the music. Ella's voice weaving around them like a spell. The moonlight spilled through the windows, painting Jada's skin silver, and Lucas's eyes never left hers. "You're not bad at this," he murmured, his voice low, vibrating through her. "Don't get used to it," she said, but her voice was breathy, betraying her. His hand slid lower, resting just above the curve of her ass, and her breath hitched. The air was thick, charged, like the moment before a storm. She felt his heartbeat under her palm, steady but fast, and it matched hers. His face was close, too close, his lips inches from hers, and when he leaned in, his breath brushed her neck, sending a shiver down her spine. "Jada," he said, his voice rough, like he was fighting something. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Me," she whispered, her lips grazing his jaw, unintentional but electric. "You're the one playing with fire." He groaned, low and primal, and his hand tightened on her waist, pulling her flush against him. Her curves pressed into his chest, and she felt the hard lines of him, the heat of his skin through his shirt. The music faded, drowned out by the roar of her pulse, the soft crash of waves outside. His lips hovered over hers, so close she could taste the whiskey on his breath. And for a moment, she thought they'd crossed that line. But then her phone rang, shrill and jarring, shattering the spell. She jerked back, her chest heaving, and fumbled for the device in her pocket. It was Caleb, his voice panicked. "Jada, it's Mason. He's having trouble breathing. We're at the ER." The world tilted. "I'm coming," she said, hanging up and shoving past Lucas, her hands shaking. "I gotta go." "Jada, wait," he started. But she was already halfway to the door. "Save it," she snapped, not looking back. This was a mistake. She ran to her car, the night air cold against her flushed skin, Lucas's touch still burning where he'd held her. Mason needed her. And nothing, not Lucas, not the contract, not her own stupid heart mattered more than that. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell. Jada sat by Mason's bed, his small hand cold in hers, an oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. The doctor, a kind-eyed woman, said it was a scare, not a full attack. But the surgery couldn't wait much longer. Jada nodded, her throat too tight to speak, and stayed until Mason fell asleep, his face peaceful despite the tubes. Caleb drove her home at dawn, the sky gray and heavy. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. "No," she admitted, staring out the window, "but I will be. Back at the apartment." She found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a check $50,000 signed by Lucas, with a note for Mason. No strings. Her hands shook as she read it, tears burning her eyes. She didn't know if it was guilt, pity, or something else. But it felt like a lifeline and a trap all at once. Lucas Sloan was unraveling her, piece by piece, and she wasn't sure she could stop it. The air at Vin Indigo was electric, charged with the kind of tension that comes before a storm. Jada West stood in the resort's glass-walled conference room, her red blouse clinging to her curves, her curls swept into a high bun that showed off the smooth line of her neck. Her brown skin caught the morning light streaming through the windows. and despite the chaos in her head, she looked like she belonged sharp, poised, untouchable. But inside, she was a mess. Mason's hospital scare 3 days ago still haunted her. The $50,000 check from Lucas burning a hole in her conscience. She hadn't cashed it yet, hadn't even told Caleb. Accepting it felt like admitting she owed Lucas something, and that scared the shit out of her. Today was the board meeting, the make-or-break moment for Lucas's control of the resort, and for her deal to save Mason. The room buzzed with suits, their voices low and predatory, like vultures circling. Olivia Crane, the lead board member gunning for Lucas, sat at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled tight, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Vanessa Reed was there too, perched like a venomous bird in a tailored blazer, her eyes flicking to Jada with barely veiled contempt. The message was clear: they were here to bury Lucas, and Jada was collateral damage. Lucas stood by the window, his dark suit crisp, his jaw set like he was ready for war. He hadn't looked at Jada since she walked in, hadn't spoken to her since that night in the villa when they danced too close to the edge. But she felt his presence, heavy and inescapable, like the pull of the tide outside. She took her seat, her hands steady despite the knot in her stomach, and opened the folder in front of her. It was her job to translate for the international investors Japanese, Chinese, and Indian execs who'd flown in to decide whether Lucas stayed or went. No pressure. Right. The meeting started with Olivia's voice, smooth and cold. We're here to address serious allegations against Mr. Sloan, financial misconduct, mismanagement, and a personal life that raises questions about his leadership. Her eyes slid to Jada, lingering just long enough to sting. We'll also evaluate the stability of his recent engagement. Jada's fingers tightened on her pen, but she kept her face blank. Bitch, she thought. But she wasn't about to give Olivia the satisfaction of a reaction. Lucas stepped forward, his voice calm but edged with steel. The allegations are baseless. My team's prepared a full audit, and I'm happy to walk you through it. As for my personal life, Jada's here to answer any questions. She's not just my fiancée, she's an asset to this resort. The room went quiet, all eyes on Jada. She felt the weight of it, the judgment, the doubt. Vanessa smirked, leaning back in her chair, and Jada knew something was coming. Sure enough, when the Chinese investor asked for a breakdown of the resort's expansion plans, Vanessa slid a thick document across the table. Ms. West, could you translate this for Mr. Zhang? It's critical to our discussion. Jada opened the file, and her heart sank. The text was a mess, simplified Chinese mixed with Hindi idioms and outdated terms, like someone had run it through a bad AI and called it a day. It wasn't just sloppy, it was sabotage. She glanced at Vanessa, whose smile was all teeth, and then at Olivia, whose face gave nothing away. They'd set her up to fail, to make her look like a fraud in front of everyone. Lucas's eyes met hers, a flicker of worry breaking his poker face. She could almost hear him. Don't screw this up. But Jada wasn't about to let these vipers win. Give me 20 minutes, she said, her voice steady, and stood, heading for the resource room down the hall. The clock was ticking, but she'd faced worse odds, alone in the small office, surrounded by monitors and dictionaries. Jada's fingers flew over the keyboard. She dissected the document, rephrasing the Chinese, untangling the Hindi, and double-checking every term for cultural accuracy. Her pulse hammered, but her mind was sharp, years of late-night study kicking in like muscle memory. She printed the revised version, her hands steady despite the adrenaline, and marched back to the conference room with 3 minutes to spare. "Here," she said, placing both the original and her corrected document on the table. The original was a mess. Wrong dialects, outdated terms, borderline offensive in places. I fixed it. "Mr. Zhang, you'll find the expansion plans clear now." The room was silent, the investors flipping through her work. Mr. Zhang nodded, a rare smile breaking his stern face. "Impressive," he said through an interpreter. "This is precise. Thank you, Ms. West." Vanessa's smirk vanished, and Olivia's eyes narrowed. But Jada didn't flinch. She'd won this round, and it felt damn good. Lucas's gaze burned into her, something like pride flickering there. But she didn't let herself linger on it. The meeting moved on, Lucas presenting numbers with his usual swagger, but the air was still thick with tension. Vanessa wasn't done. As the session wrapped, Vanessa stood, her voice syrupy. "One last thing. There's been chatter online, rumors that Ms. West's engagement is transactional. Some even say she's leveraged her, let's say, charms to secure her position. Care to comment?" Lucas. The room froze. Jada's blood ran cold, her nails digging into her palms. The investors shifted, whispering, and Olivia's smile was back, sharp and triumphant. Jada opened her mouth, ready to tear Vanessa apart, but Lucas beat her to it. "Enough," he said, his voice a low growl that silenced the room. He stood, his presence filling the space like a storm. "Vanessa, you're done. Pack your shit and get out. You're fired." Vanessa's face went white. "You can't." "I just did," he snapped, cutting her off. He turned to the board, his eyes blazing. "Jada West isn't just my fiancée. I love her not because of some contract, not because of this resort, but because she's the strongest, smartest woman I've ever met. You want to question her, you're questioning me. And I don't lose." The room was a graveyard, every breath held. Jada's heart stopped, her mind reeling. Love her. The word hit like a punch, raw and impossible. She stared at Lucas, his face fierce but vulnerable. And for the first time, she saw the man behind the mask, not the smug millionaire, but someone who'd just laid himself bare for her. The investors murmured, some nodding, others scribbling notes. Olivia's smile faltered, but she didn't push. Jada couldn't breathe. She stood, her chair scraping the floor, and bolted for the door, her heels clicking on the marble. She didn't care about the meeting, the board, any of it. She needed air, needed to think. Lucas's words echoed in her head. I love her, and they terrified her. Because what if he meant it? And what if he didn't? She made it to the resort's private beach. The sand cool under her feet as she kicked off her shoes. The waves roared, gray and wild, matching the storm in her chest. The sky was bruised with clouds, the air heavy with salt and the promise of rain. She sank to her knees, her blouse damp from the spray, and screamed into the wind. I don't trust you. Lucas, I can't. Footsteps crunched behind her, and she knew it was him before he spoke. Jada, Lucas said, his voice rough, almost broken. She didn't turn, but she felt him drop to the sand beside her, close enough that his warmth cut through the chill. I meant it, he said, every damn word. She laughed. A jagged sound, and finally faced him. His suit was rumpled, his hair wet from the mist, his blue eyes raw with something she didn't want to name. "You don't love me," she said, her voice shaking. "You love the idea of saving me, of playing the hero. I'm not your fucking fairy tale." He reached for her, but she pulled back, sand clinging to her hands. "Damn it. Jada," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm not a hero. I'm a selfish bastard who's been running from everything real my whole life. But you're real. You're fire, and I'm burning up." Her breath caught, tears mixing with the salt on her cheeks. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so bad it hurt, but fear clawed at her. "If you're lying," she whispered, "if this is some game, I'll break you." He moved then, fast, pulling her into his arms. His lips crashed into hers, desperate and fierce, tasting of whiskey and rain. The kiss was a storm, all heat and hunger, his hands cupping her face, her fingers digging into his shoulders. The waves roared around them, the sand rough against her knees, and she kissed him back, pouring every ounce of fear and want into it. His tongue brushed hers, a low groan rumbling in his chest, and her body arched into him, the wet fabric of her blouse sticking to her skin. The world narrowed to the salt on his lips, the heat of his hands, the thud of her heart against his. She pulled back, gasping, her lips swollen, his forehead pressed to hers. "If you hurt me," she said, her voice raw, "I'll kill you." He laughed, breathless, his thumb tracing her jaw. Fair enough. They stayed there, tangled in the sand, the storm rolling in above them. The kiss had changed everything, but Jada wasn't ready to trust it, not yet. She stood, brushing sand from her clothes, and Lucas watched her, his eyes still burning. "We're not done," he said. "Not a question." "No," she said, her voice steady now. "But I need time." He nodded, standing, his suit soaked and ruined. "Take it. I'm not going anywhere." Back at her apartment that night, Jada found an email on her phone, tucked between spam and bills. It was from UC Berkeley, an invitation to finish her linguistics degree, with a full scholarship. Attached was a letter of recommendation, Lucas's name at the bottom, dated weeks ago, before the villa, before the kiss. Her hands shook as she read it, his words cutting deep. "Jada West is a force of nature, a mind sharper than any I've encountered. She deserves every opportunity to shine." She sank onto the couch, tears falling freely now. He'd believed in her before she believed in herself, and that was the scariest thing of all. The check for Mason's surgery was still in her drawer, uncashed, but this was something else. A door she hadn't dared open, and Lucas had handed her the key. The cliffs of Vin Indigo glowed under the dawn's first light, the Pacific a restless beast below, its waves whispering secrets against the rocks. Jada West stood in her apartment's cramped kitchen, the smell of burnt toast and cheap coffee grounding her in a world that felt like it was spinning too fast. Her phone sat on the counter, the UC Berkeley email still open, Lucas's letter of recommendation staring back like a dare. She deserves every opportunity to shine. Those words had kept her up all night, tangled with the memory of his lips on hers, the salt and heat of that kiss on the beach. She'd cashed his $50,000 check yesterday, wiring it straight to the hospital for Mason's surgery. But this scholarship, This belief in her was something she couldn't wrap her head around. Lucas Sloan was rewriting her story, and she wasn't sure she was ready for the ending. Caleb shuffled in, his hoodie rumpled from an all-nighter. "Yo, Jada, you look like hell." "What's up?" She forced a smile, shutting her phone. "Just thinking. Mason's surgery's scheduled next week. You good to stay with him always," he said, grabbing a mug. His eyes softened. "You don't gotta carry it all. You know, me and Mason were okay because of you." Her throat tightened, and she turned away, busying herself with the dishes. "Don't get sappy on me, kid. I'm just doing what Mom would have done." But Caleb wasn't done. "That Sloan guy, he's for real. Ain't he? I saw that press conference. Man's got it bad for you." Jada's hands stilled in the soapy water. The memory of Lucas's voice, "I love her," hitting like a punch. "It's complicated," she muttered, but her heart wasn't buying it. Complicated didn't cover the way he'd looked at her, raw and unguarded, or the way her body still hummed from his touch. She was due at Vin Indigo for a follow-up with the board, a final chance to seal Lucas's position and her deal. But first, she needed answers. She pulled on a leather jacket over her black dress, the fabric hugging her curves, and drove to the resort. The coastal road, a blur of cliffs and sea. The air was crisp, scented with pine and salt, and her pulse raced as she parked near the main office. Lucas was inside, she could feel it, like a storm waiting to break. The office was quieter than last time, the glass walls reflecting a sky turning gold. Lucas stood by his desk, sleeves rolled up, his dark hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked up when she walked in, and his blue eyes hit her like a shockwave, raw and intense. "Jada," he said, voice low, almost careful. "Didn't expect you this early. We need to talk," she said, shutting the door behind her. The click echoed, sealing them in a space that felt too small for what was coming. She crossed her arms, her dress shifting to show the curve of her hip, and she caught his eyes flick there, just for a second. "That letter to Berkeley. Why didn't you tell me?" He leaned against the desk, his posture casual but his gaze anything but. "Didn't want you to think it was part of the deal," he said. "You earned that. Jada, I just opened the door." "Bullshit," she said, stepping closer, her voice sharp. "You don't get to play hero without asking me. You think I need you to fix my life?" His jaw tightened, and he straightened, closing the distance between them. The air crackled, thick with cedar and the faint tang of his sweat. "I'm not fixing you," he said, voice rough. "You're not broken. But I see you. Jada, every damn part of you. And I'm not letting you stay invisible." Her breath caught, and she hated how his words sank into her, cracking the walls she'd built. "You don't get it," she said, her voice shaking. "I signed that contract for Mason, not for you. But now you're making me want things I can't afford to want." He was close now, too close, his body a wall of heat and muscle. "Then want them," he said, his voice a low growl. "Want me? I'm right here." She should have walked away, should have shut it down, but her hands moved on their own, grabbing his shirt, pulling him in. Their lips crashed together, a desperate, hungry kiss that tasted of salt and need. His hands slid to her waist, fingers digging into her hips, and she arched into him, her curves pressing against his chest. The room spun, the morning light painting their skin in gold, the distant roar of the sea matching the thunder in her pulse. His tongue brushed hers, a low groan rumbling in his throat, and she bit his lip, hard enough to make him hiss. The sound sent a jolt through her, her nails scraping his neck as she pulled him closer. "Jada," he murmured against her mouth, his hands sliding up her back, tangling in her curls. "You're killing me." "Good," she whispered, her voice raw, and kissed him again, deeper, until the world was just heat and want and the cedar scent of him. But then her phone buzzed, a harsh reminder of reality, and she broke away, gasping, her lips swollen, his taste still on her tongue. The call was from the hospital. Mason's pre-surgery tests were done, and he was stable. Relief flooded her, but it didn't erase the fire Lucas had lit. "We're not done," she said, stepping back, her voice unsteady but firm. "But I need to do this my way." He nodded, his eyes dark with something that looked like awe. "I'm not going anywhere." The board meeting was a battlefield, but Jada was ready. She walked into the conference room, her black dress sharp against her glowing skin, her curls loose and defiant. Lucas stood beside her, his suit impeccable, but his eyes kept drifting to her, like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. Olivia Crane was there, her silver hair glinting under the lights, her face a mask of calculated calm. The other board members watched, their expressions unreadable, and the international investors sat in a row, their presence a reminder of the stakes. Jada had a plan. She'd spent the morning digging, using her language skills to comb through emails and documents Olivia's team had overlooked. What she found was a bombshell proof that Olivia had leaked the embezzlement rumors to tank Lucas's stock, hoping to force a buyout. It was a risk, calling her out in front of everyone, but Jada wasn't here to play small. When Olivia started her usual spiel about Lucas's instability, Jada stood, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "If we're talking instability, let's talk about you, Miss Crane. I've got emails translated from Mandarin. By the way, that show you fed lies to the press to sabotage Lucas. You want to explain that?" The room went dead silent, Olivia's face paling. The investors leaned forward, murmuring, and Lucas's eyes widened, a flicker of pride breaking his calm. Jada slid a folder across the table, her translations and screenshots laid out like evidence in a trial. "This isn't just about Lucas," she said, her voice steady. "It's about this resort, about the people who make it run. You want to tear it down? You'll have to go through me." The board erupted, questions flying, but Olivia had no answers. By the end, the vote was unanimous. Lucas stayed. Olivia was out. The investors clapped, some even shaking Jada's hand. And Lucas's gaze never left her, burning with something deeper than gratitude. That night, Lucas found her on a cliffside terrace, the resort quiet under a sky blazing with stars. Jada stood at the railing, her dress fluttering in the breeze, her skin catching the moonlight like polished ebony. The air was cool, scented with salt and wild sage, and the waves below sang a low, steady hymn. Lucas approached, his boots soft on the stone, and stopped beside her, his leather jacket open to reveal a plain white shirt. "You were incredible today," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "You saved my ass." She laughed, soft but real. "Saved my own, too. Mason's surgery's covered, and I'm not done yet." He turned to her, his eyes searching. What do you mean? She took a breath, the words heavy but sure. I'm going to Berkeley, finishing my degree, and I'm done with the contract. Lucas, I want us to be real. No games, no deals. His face softened, and he stepped closer, his hand finding hers. You think I'd let you go? He said, his voice rough. I've been real since that first kiss. Jada, I love you every stubborn, brilliant, fire-starting inch of you. Her heart stuttered, but she didn't look away. Prove it, she said, a challenge and a plea. He didn't hesitate. He dropped to one knee, pulling a small leather-bound notebook from his pocket. Not a ring, but the one she'd used to scribble Hindi vocab that first night he'd seen her. I kept this, he said, his voice thick, because it was the moment I knew you were more than I deserved. Marry me. Jada. For real. Tears burned her eyes, but she laughed, pulling him up. You're such an asshole, she said, her voice breaking, and kissed him, soft at first, then deep, their lips moving like they'd been made for this. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her close, and the world fell away, leaving only the salt on his skin, the warmth of his breath, the steady crash of waves below. Months later, Jada stood on a Maui cliff, the new Vin Indigo resort gleaming behind her. She was the director of international experience, her name in gold on her office door, her degree from Berkeley framed on the wall. Mason was recovering, his smile brighter than ever, and Caleb was thriving in college. Jada wore a white linen dress, her curls wild in the tropical breeze, and Lucas stood beside her, his hand in hers, their wedding bands glinting in the sun. She'd started a scholarship in her mom's name, funding kids like her who'd been told they didn't belong. And when she saw a young maid scrubbing floors at the resort, Jada stopped her. You're more than this, she said, pressing a card into the girl's hand. Call me. We'll make it happen. That night, in their villa, Jada and Lucas lay on a couch by a roaring fireplace, the air warm with cedar and smoke. His lips traced her collarbone, slow and deliberate, and she arched into him, her fingers tangling in his hair. Your trouble, she murmured, her voice husky, the firelight dancing on her skin. Always, he said, his breath hot against her neck, and they laughed. The sound mingling with the crackle of the flames. The future wasn't certain. New resorts, new fights, new dreams, but they'd face it together, fire and all. And that's the epic end to Jada and Lucas's wild ride. From a fake marriage to a love that burned down every wall. They proved what's possible when you fight for what's real. Hit that subscribe button to catch more stories that'll set your heart on fire. Drop a comment. What do you think Jada and Lucas will face next in Maui? Let's hear it.